Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the regular scheduled Taber Town Council meeting for September 14th, 2020. We first off have a subdivision authority meeting to deal with, so I will call that meeting to order and ask for an adoption of the agenda as presented, please. Councillor Thames.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we accept the agenda as presented.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. And on to item number 3, adoption of the minutes. Item 3.1, minutes of regular meeting of Subdivision Authority, May 25th, 2020. Mr. Armfield.
Yes, Council will see that those meeting minutes are there for your consideration. If there's any changes you would like to make, please let us know. Otherwise, they're there for you to adopt.
Great, thank you. Any questions arising? Someone prepared to make that motion? Councillor Firth.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that the Subdivision Authority adopts the minutes of the regular meeting of Subdivision Authority held on May 25th, 2020 as presented.
Thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. On to item number 4, subdivision application, item 4.1, subdivision TT 20-0-009. Mr. Armfield.
Yeah, we have a subdivision for you this afternoon that's a little bit more intricate than many that we bring to the table. Ms. Monks, if you'd like to come up and speak to this.
Ms. Monks.
Good afternoon, Your Worship and members of Council. So administration has been working under direction of Council through Resolution 86/2020 on the subject subdivision. At the regular meeting of Council on February 10th, 2020, Council accepted an offer to purchase 10 acres on the east side of 50th Street, north of 64th Avenue, and directed administration to proceed with subdivision of that lot and completion of the sale. All of the conditions have since been met, and the purchaser is prepared to move forward with the purchase. The tentative plan has been circulated to adjacent properties and advertised in the Taber Times. At a special meeting of the Municipal Planning Commission on September 1, 2020, MPC has recommended that the Subdivision Authority approve the subdivision with the conditions identified in your request for decision. Upon approval, administration can then proceed with the 21-day appeal period and final endorsement of the tentative plan at land titles. This will allow the purchase to be finalized. Administration is recommending approval of the subdivision by the Subdivision Authority.
All right, thank you. Any questions arising? None whatsoever. Someone prepared to make a motion? Councillor Firth.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that the Subdivision Authority approve subdivision TT 20-0-009, part of Lot 17, Block 1, Plan 0414376, and Block X, Plan 5440AQ, within Southwest Quarter Section 8, Township 10, Range 16, west of the 4th Meridian, civically described as 6779 and 7001 50th Street, with the following conditions 1 through 9.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. I just asked for a motion to close the meeting. Councillor Firth.
That's the meeting.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. On to the regular scheduled Taber Town Council meeting. Call that meeting to order and ask for adoption of the agenda as well. Councillor Beckering.
Mr. Mayor, I move to adopt the agenda as presented.
Thank you. Motion on the table. All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. On to item number 3, 3.1, minutes of the public hearing meeting of Council August 17th, 2020. Mr. Armfield.
3 sets of Council meeting minutes for Council to consider. This is the first from the public hearing on August the 17th.
All right, thank you. Any questions arising? Someone prepared to make a motion? Councillor Thames.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I move that Council adopts the minutes of the public hearing meeting of Council held on August 17, 2020 as presented.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. And 3.2, minutes of regular meeting of Council August 17th, 2020. Mr. Armfield.
Again, for Council's consideration, we present the August 17th meeting minutes.
All right, thank you. Any questions arising? Someone prepared to make that motion? Councillor Garner.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'm prepared to make that motion. The Council adopts the minutes of the regular meeting of Council held on August 17th, 2020 as presented.
Thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 3.3, minutes of special meeting of council August 24th, 2020. Mr. Armfield.
Yes, that comes from a special council meeting to keep a project moving forward with an amendment the council wanted to see on that capital item. And those meeting minutes are there for your consideration.
All right, thank you. Once again, any questions arising? Someone prepared to make that motion? Councillor Beckerin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll move that council adopts the minutes of the special meeting of council held on 24th of August 2020 as presented.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Item number 4, business horizon. There are none. Item number 5, bylaws. Item number 5.1, bylaw 14/2020, long-term borrowing Chamber of Commerce. Mr. Armfield.
Yes, you're going to see a lot of Mr. Orwa this evening, and this is the first time that he is up in the hot seat discussing this borrowing bylaw for the Chamber of Commerce. Mr. Orwa, please.
Mr. Orwa.
Good afternoon, His Worship and members of council. Now, before you is bylaw number 14-2020. That's a long-term borrowing Chamber of Commerce building project. So this bylaw, everything has gone through the first reading, and then it has gone through the requirements, advertisements for 2 weeks, and we waited for 15-day petition period. Nobody petitioned. So it's back before council today for second and third reading. Now, the only change that I made on that bylaw is just in line with our internal template. So there's nothing really serious out there. We had to add in some definitions which were not in the original bylaw.
All right, thank you. Any questions arising? None whatsoever. Someone prepared to make that first motion? Councillor Firth.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that council gives second reading to long-term borrowing Chamber of Commerce Building Project Bylaw 14-2020 as amended at this meeting.
Thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Someone prepared to make the second motion required? Councillor Garner.
Is that the second motion or third motion?
Or sorry, it was second motion
Hey,
today, but the third reading, yes.
Yeah,
correct.
exactly. I'm prepared to move ahead, Mr. Mayor, at this time that council gives third and final reading to long-term borrowing Chamber of Commerce Building Project Bylaw 14-2020 as presented at this meeting.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. On to item number 5.2, bylaw 15/2020, long-term borrowing. Mr. Arfield.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, very similar process, different project. This one's for 56th Avenue. Mr. Orwa, can you lead us through the particulars?
Again, it's the one for 56th Avenue Road Extension Project. This one has also gone through the first reading, and we're bringing it back to council for the second and third reading after it has gone through the whole process. Again, advertisement, nobody petitioned, and here we are again for the second and third reading. Then after all this, we'll have to wait for another 30 days. Then we will submit to Alberta Capital Finance.
All right, thank you, Mr. Roy. Any questions arising? Someone prepared to make the first motion related to the second reading. Councillor Temps.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I move that council give second reading to long-term borrowing 56th Avenue Road Extension Project Bylaw 15-2020 as amended at this meeting.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. And someone prepared to make the third reading and second motion. Councillor Bruin.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'll make the motion that council gives third and final reading to long-term borrowing 56th Avenue Road Extension Project Bylaw 15-2020 at this meeting.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Action items, item number 6, item 6.1, fourth ball diamond report. Mr. Armfield.
Yes, if I could call Ms. Phillips up, Director of Recreation. There's been a couple of items that council may want to make a decision on with regards to the fourth baseball diamond, enhancing some of the trees there. Ms. Phillips, if you could take us away.
Thank you, Ms. Phillips.
Good afternoon, Your Worship and members of council. On May 27th, 2019, Council directed administration to enter into a construction license agreement with the Kinsman Club of Tabor for the construction of the fourth ball diamond. The project is now complete, and the Kinsmen have provided us with a final report with the remaining funds of $5,839.76. The safety has been completed at the ball diamond, and it was satisfactory. There's no concerns. I don't know, for those of you I think most of you were there on Saturday, I think they did a great job. As Mr. Armfeldt mentioned, I do have a couple other agenda items that relate to the ball diamond, but this is information for council to see if there's any questions.
All right, thank you. Any questions whatsoever? Seeing none, someone prepared to make a motion? Councillor Garner.
Mr. Mayor, I'm prepared to make a motion at this time that council accepts the fourth ball diamond final report as information.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? Councillor Brune?
I'm speaking in support of the motion, but I'd like to also commend all the volunteers and everyone that did all the fine work out there, the Kinsmen and all the volunteers that did that. It looks fantastic, and it's a very nice ceremony on Saturday.
All right, thank you. Once again, motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimous. Thank you. Item 6.2, storage tank systems. Mr. Armfeldt.
Pardon me, I'm just catching up with my items on my agenda here. Yes, Chief Munshaw, and well, let Chief Munshaw do the introduction to Captain Swarbrick. And
Thank you, Chief Munshaw.
Thank you, Council, members of Council. Today we're going to be talking about storage tanks and the inspection of the flammable storage tanks under the Quality Management Plan. And our Fire Prevention Officer, Captain Swarbrick, will be leading us on that.
Thank you. Captain Swarbrick.
Mayor, Council, good afternoon. Thank you for your time today. As the agenda package indicates, we are accredited as a municipality to all aspects of the fire code. Up until now, we've chosen to opt out of Part 4, which is the storage tank systems for flammable liquids, and allow that to be handled by the PTMAA, Petroleum Tank Management Association of Alberta, which ceased to exist on August 31st this year. Therefore, the Safety Codes Council has assumed the responsibilities, and we are seeking council support to become accredited in Part 4. And that will allow for an additional revenue stream, which is the permitting process. There are approximately 100 tanks within town limits that have to be permitted and inspected each year, and that will allow us to obtain that permitting fee, which will come forward to you at a later fee bylaw presentation. This will allow for us to maintain Town of Tabor as a safer community. It will give us a better in-depth view of those storage tanks and being able to go out and inspect them. We have the qualifications at this time, and so we are seeking council support.
Great, thank you. Any questions arising? Councillor Strauss.
Yes, Your Worship, to our delegation here. Just a question. How long does it take to inspect one tank?
One tank, that depends on the tanks. Generally, these are in groupings, as such in the bulk storage plants. So you could have 8 tanks in that site. It can take approximately 15 minutes to do one tank.
So it's not very cumbersome then? You know, because what I do is I look at your 4 to 5 hours per month. So if they're in groupings and if it takes out, yeah, I can follow the rationale now then.
It also depend on the age and type of tank. Some are underground; they can take a little bit longer.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Councillor Thames.
Yes, thanks, Mr. Mayor. To our delegation, as we do this, and we get to take the revenue stream is the permitting side, and we're taking that over from Alberta Safety Codes. And is that something that is done thus through the fire department or through administration or through the office here? who's taking over the permitting side of that thing, and the benefit of that instead of having Alberta safety codes? What's the difference for us? Like, there's revenue stream, but why would we not want to have the Alberta Safety Code Council carry on doing it?
Okay, so that was a couple of questions, I think. Firstly, the fire department would have to set up the permitting process and how that works. We're currently in conversations with the Safety Codes Council for their guidance to help make that happen. Why would we want the revenue? That would help offset the expense of the increased man hours required. And the benefit would be because we get to maintain a better database and more knowledge of the communities, the tanks in the community.
Councillor Beckering.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through the delegation, if I have a 25-liter tank of gasoline in my shed at home for my lawnmower, does that include in the tank? My question is, what is a tank?
So the legislation doesn't occur until 2,500 liters. So that doesn't take place of a storage tank at home. It's over 2,500 liters, and it would only apply to businesses in the town of Taber, if that makes sense.
Mr. Mayor, thank you, sir.
All right, thank you. Any other questions arising? Councillor Towns.
Further to that question, so if it only includes tanks, this is just fuel, petroleum, or is this like waste oil, cooking oil, that all of them sort of tanks?
That would include those tanks. Flammable liquids is the key there. So if it'll burn, then it's a tank that we need to be concerned with.
So then at the end of the day, this is a good thing because the fire department knows where every tank is at the same time.
Yes, very nice.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. Councillor Bruin.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that council supports Taber Fire Department inspection program of storage tank systems for flammable liquids.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you, gentlemen. On to item 6.3, Taber Police Service Focus Group requests. Mr. Armfield.
Yeah, Your Worship, and to council, I can speak to this one. This is a request that has come from Dr. Chief Graham Abella to attend to a focus group session in the Dreddy Room on September the 22nd. Council has never been, in my conversation with the chief, has never been specifically invited to this. Now councillors have shown up during other focus group events, but for the purposes of their planning and strategic planning, he took it upon himself to specifically this year send a invite to council. So this is what you have in front of you.
All right, thank you. Any questions whatsoever? All right, someone prepared to make a motion? Councillor Firth.
Mr. Mayor, I move that council authorizes available council members to attend the Taber Police Service Focus Group session to be held in 2020.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 6.4, Ken McDonald Memorial Sports Complex tree proposal. Mr. Armfield.
Yes, Ms. Phillips is coming back to discuss the leftover funds from the capital project of the fourth baseball diamond.
Thank you, Ms. Phillips.
Good afternoon. The Kinsman Club of Taber approached administration with a request to use the remaining funds from the fourth ball diamond development to plant 76 Assiniboine poplar trees at Ken Mac. The trees would line the inside of the fences between all four ball diamonds. There are some irrigation needs to the east and west that administration feels should be addressed before trees are planted. If council supports this project, administration is recommending that council reallocate the remaining capital funds from the fourth ball diamond to general Ken McDonald Memorial Sports Complex upgrades so they could be used for a variety of projects. And then a portion of these funds could then be used to extend the irrigation, potentially even this fall, and that which would then follow with the trees if approved. The Kinsman did also secure a donation or a commitment of a donation to pay for the remaining trees, as $5,800 will not cover that many trees. One consideration with this request for the use of these funds for something like irrigation is that the Ball Diamond Society, the Softball and Baseball Enhancement Society has indicated that they do plan to come back to council to request to use those funds to continue their project of potentially a concession and some groundwork between the Ball Diamonds. So that is something that I wanted to make sure I did bring forward before bringing this to you. And this request for the trees did go to, and the irrigation did go to the rec board and was supported at that level.
All right, thank you. Any questions arising? Councillor Strauss.
Yes, Your Worship, to our delegation here. I've got a question. Why was the Assiniboine poplar tree chosen for this project?
I'm not actually sure. It was one of the members that was doing the work on the fourth Ball Diamond that had priced them out and brought it forward.
My experience with poplars has never been credible. I have some towering poplars next to my property, and they spread their roots through my lawn and everything. So I could imagine that they would be creeping their way inside the diamonds over there and whatnot. I'm not just sure if this type of tree is the proper tree for that location or not. And I imagine somebody must have that information that they chose the Assiniboine poplar.
The towering poplars are very bad for that. I agree. I could definitely look into more on the Assiniboine. When I did talk to the staff about it, they didn't have concerns about this choice of tree. They are a less expensive tree to put in, so I think that their dollars could go further putting in this type, but I'm not sure exactly why they chose that type.
Just as a further comment, I mean, even on the Taber Golf Course, anywhere you see poplar trees, you see huge root spreads all over the place. So, and I know there's other trees that we have in boulevards and whatnot that the roots are way less obtrusive than this.
We could definitely recommend a different type of tree and then see how that fits. You know, maybe it's not 76, maybe there's less trees, but a different variety.
Suit me.
Okay.
Councillor Bruin.
Just some thought maybe that I think the Assiniboine poplar trees, part of the choice of that is just because they're quick growing as well. They'll provide shade sooner than the others.
All right. Any other questions arising? All right. Someone prepared to make a motion? Councillor Towns.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I move that council approves the reallocation of the remaining capital funds from 4-72-80-645-0027 Fourth Ball Diamond to Ken McDonald Memorial Sports Complex upgrades and directs administration to use a portion of these funds to extend the existing irrigation lines to reach the fence lines between all four diamonds at Ken McDonald Memorial Sports Complex.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously, thank you. And a second motion option. Councillor Towns.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I also move that council approves the Kinsman Club of Taber to utilize the remaining $5,839.76 from the development of the fourth Ball Diamond, along with the fundraising efforts to install up to 76 Assiniboine poplar trees or alternatives along the fence line between the diamonds at Ken McDonald Memorial Sports Complex, with the planting to take place in consultation with the town of Taber, a recreation manager for exact locations and after the irrigation lines have been extended.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 6.5, Ken McDonald Memorial Sports Complex Campground. Mr. Armstrong.
It's back to you, Ms. Phillips, for the next one.
Last one for Ken Mac. On June 22nd, Councillor Garner requested administration investigate the cost of installing 16 fire rings at the Ken McDonald campground. Administration acquired quotes for a variety of options, as this is an item that had been brought previously to the Rec Board, and the information was presented to the Rec Board. The Rec Board recommended that we bring to council for consideration the installation of 5 fire rings plus picnic tables with gravel pads, going with the lower cost options with the attached quote, which would come in a cost of about $60,000. Administration is now bringing this topic back to council for consideration and direction.
All right, thank you. Any questions arising? Councillor Strauss.
Yes, Your Worship. Speaking against enhancing, putting those rings out there, I think it's a huge cost for a facility that's really not. It's not really an open campground site like the Trout Pond. I can't justify that kind of an expense for the upgrades there.
All right, thank you. Councillor Garner.
I'd like to speak in favor of going ahead with part of this project. I see no reason why we can't proceed ahead with a piece of this project by installing a gravel base and simple fire rings. Because I think now with the completion of that quad, you're going to have bigger groups that are going to want to use that facility, and you're going to find people are going to camp out there on the weekends, and I think that would be a nice addition to it. So yeah, if you look at the whole scheme of the project, that's a lot of money, but I think a good first step would be put some basic fire rings out there at this time, which would come to approximately, from, if my numbers are correct, if I'm reading this right, about $14,500. And it sounds to me like the work can be done in-house with our staff putting doing the install, if am I correct in that, Ms. Phillips?
Just doing the fire rings, it is a more basic install. It would be one of our projects for next year to take that time to allocate for this project. Bigger than this, I would recommend no. It is an option if that's direction from council.
All right, thank you. Councillor Strauss.
Yes, Your Worship, Ms. Phillips here. What kind of revenue do we garner from these sites out there?
This year?
No, in a normal year.
Well, you'd think this year would be better. I don't know actually off the top of my head. Typically in previous years, it's almost entirely been used for tournaments only. So at this point, the revenues are minimal. The idea being that with the fourth ball diamond, we might get more tournaments in and then see more use at the Ken McDonald ball diamond. So
you obviously don't seem to be too positive that there's much, I mean, how many tournaments are out there? Is there 2 or 3 tournaments at best through the summertime?
That would have camping probably, yeah.
Not
Although
much
that
revenue.
could expand again with this fourth diamond. I think it does draw more attention there. And then if we promote it as one of our regular campgrounds, there's potential. So I guess it all depends on what direction we want to go with that campground.
Seems like a lot of money yet for 3 or 4 camping times a year.
All right, thank you. Councillor Firth.
Mr. Mayor, I was quite surprised that the cost for the fire rings and gravel pads was so much, but I do agree that with that fourth ball diamond being finished now, that this campground may get more use, but to me, investing in that campground, I think if we're going to put that money into it, picnic tables would be, there's really nothing out there. So picnic tables, I think, would be used more. Those could be used as day use as well, rather than fire pits. Even if people are camping out there for a camp or for a ball tournament, I don't know that fire pits are really a make or break. I don't know if it's worth the amount of money to invest in it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Garner.
I find it interesting that, most people when they go camping will have a portable table, possibly. I know I have 2 when I go camping, but I think those fire rings are justified in that most people when they go camping like to kind of wind down around a campfire and cook their hot dogs and talk about what could have been. And so I can justify that pretty easily, the $14,500 to do that. I think it just supplements. You have to look at the overall picture maybe from 60,000 feet. We've got good shade out there. We've got a bathroom facility with running water and showers. We have it roughed in for 15 amp power. People can back up there, and I think the natural evolution is to follow through on some of these other things, amenities you might call them. And I agree with Councillor Firth. Picnic tables would be good, but I think the first step in my mind, anyways, is to go ahead with that, with those fire rings for $14,500.
All right, thank you. Councillor Thames.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. My concern with this is we don't really know how much more it's going to get used or how much less it's going to get used, if it's going to get used less. But I have a tough time thinking that to spend this kind of money to do this on a maybe. I would rather wait at least a year to see what next year brings, because I have some concerns about spending this much money on to do something when part of it is, well, let's put fire rings. That's where it started. And I'm after careful review. Well, let's make sure we put gravel pads because we got this dried grass issue out there. And we all know the wind blows in southern Alberta. I personally would like to see this not happen, at least this year, and wait till we've gone through a season and how well them ball diamonds do get used before we spend this kind of money putting in fire pits. So, thank you.
All right, thank you. Councillor Bruin.
I agree with what Councillor Towns is saying there. I supported the motion at first, but thinking more about it, it might be wiser to put that money into something else. But we don't advertise our camping there at all, so not a lot of people know that we have camping there. I'd certainly like to see this maybe looked at again in the future.
All right, thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Beckering.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Since there is no motion on the floor and no further discussion, I suggest we move on.
All right, I just had one comment, just speaking as a potential in favor of that motion. Potential that I've had a number of people ask me about that campground this year in particular there, and that's one of the deterrents for not using it is by not having the fire pits there. So I agree with Councillor Garner that that is an attraction. That was a high priority for the trout pond, and I think we should certainly at least consider that sometime in the future, if nothing else. But it's certainly a concern for people not using it currently. Councillor Garner.
In response to Councillor Beckering's non-existence of a motion, I would like to make a motion at this point in time so that we can finalize this discussion and move on to something else. So the motion that I would make is that I wish to make a motion that Council directs administration to proceed forward with regards to the installation of 16 basic fire pits with screens and gravel pads at the Ken McDonald Sports Park at a cost of $14,500, with installation to be done by staff at their convenience.
Great, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? Councillor Thames.
Where's the funding coming from?
Councillor Garner.
Revenues.
Pardon me?
General revenues.
All right. Councillor Bruin.
Could I make a friendly amendment, perhaps, that we include it in the 2021 budget for decision?
Councillor Beckering.
Mr. Mayor, point of order. That's not enhancing, or it's changing the intent of the motion so much that it shouldn't be a friendly amendment.
Mr. Becker and I would agree, yes, Councillor Bruin.
Withdraw
I know what you're saying, but yes, I would agree with that. All right, thank you. All right, once again, motion on the table. Mr. Armfield.
Your Worship, I would recommend that we amend, Council may wish to amend the general revenue to capital reserves. Ultimately, this would be a capital project.
All right, thank you.
I would accept that.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Defeated? You're not voting? You're not voting?
I voted.
No, I didn't see Councillor Bruin. Did you vote? Did you vote?
Yeah, he voted. It was
Sorry.
4-3.
Pardon me?
I think it passed. It was
Did
4-3.
sorry, I did not see that. You voted in favor? You did vote in favor, Councilor? All right, we can do that, sure. We'll call that motion, or call that motion on the table again. All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. Carried. Sorry, Councilor Burr, did not see that. All right, item 6.6, proposed 10-year capital plan. Mr. Arfeld.
Yes, Mr. Orwa, if you'd like to come up and begin the presentation for the capital plan. So this is the first of many discussions that we'll have with council on this matter, and I think this is just opening it up for getting everybody ready for this discussion that'll no doubt go on over the next couple of months.
All right, thank you, Mr. Orwa.
Very much, members of council. Again, so the 10-year plan presented today is part of what I would call the enterprise business planning, which involves the budget direction from council. So we have developed a multi-year project here, which is our investment plan for the next 10 years. And one thing I would like to note there that these particular projects have not been funded yet. It's just left for council discussion for tonight. Now, I would like to also to emphasize that the long-range financial planning allows the town of Taber to tailor projects to the changing needs within the community. And that's why we involve council for their input as well. And again, to help us manage our finances, including savings for maintaining our major capital investments. Now, I hope council members had a chance to peruse through the 10-year projects from each department. And what we're going to do today is probably have my squad back here. They'll be coming one by one. At least if you have any questions for each and every department, then they'll be taking those questions. And I think I expect them to be very brief today. And I think in that order, first of all, I would call Public Works, because you can see from the projects, if you scroll to the 10-year projects, Public Works, the infrastructure area seem to be having the longest. And I've broken out those projects into different sub-functions. That is the water area, the wastewater, the transportation, so that you can see. And I'll leave that one for Mr. Shear to give council his vision in those areas, which I believe will be very brief tonight.
All right, thank you. Mr. Shearer.
Good afternoon, everyone. So you see, we have a lot of projects. I think when I was done was up to 62 million roughly. Doesn't mean this is all has to be done. I actually look at this as more of a 20-year plan than a 10-year plan. And there's a lot of work and a lot of money to be spent, but basically 2021, the most important projects we can relate to is the cast iron replacement, UV light protection. That's at the wastewater plant. That's our last chance of killing all the bacteria before it goes out to the river. These lights are 12 years old. They need to be replaced, and that really needs to be done. Are there any other specific needs, council would like in 2021 or any other years? Or
Councilor Chavez.
Your Worship, to Mr. Shearer here. I see there's a couple items here in 2021 that I don't agree with. One of them is a rubber tire excavator, and the other one is a downtown bulb.
Rubber tire excavators are just the tires. There's $45,000. Those are hard wall tires. I don't have that in the operating budget, but it is they're over $10,000 for each tire, and they need to be replaced. That they're over 8 years old and they're too slippery. It's unsafe to operate the equipment in wintertime.
Sure, maybe my line doesn't match up here, but it comes out to $280,000. Is that a misprint? Or might just
I have 45,000, and it's right there too on the wasteland management.
Transportation services?
Oh no, sorry. That's the excavator.
Yes.
Okay, that excavator has given us a lot of problems. It has 22,000 hours on it at this point. Most equipment, 15, 18,000 is what trade-in time. It definitely has gone its life cycle, that's for sure. The problem we're having, we're putting a lot of money into it. This year, I think we spent $25,000 alone on it, is finding parts. We're importing parts from Europe to try and fix this machine. So it's either replace it or we might have to come back with a rental or something.
All right, thank you. Mr. Arfeld.
Yes, I would encourage my team to do more listening this evening than speaking. Our mission here tonight is to hear what council may accept at future meetings rather than defend our positions here. So that's why the presentation on behalf of administration should be brief, and then we should be listening, please.
All right, thank you. Any other questions arising? Councillor Bruin.
I'm just asking if this rubber tire excavator, this is one we looked back at a couple years ago, and this has been pushed off a little further down the road to 21.
Pushed off for a few years, yes.
Yes, it's okay, thank you.
Right, Councillor Tams.
Curiosity question, what size is that excavator? How many ton?
It's not the biggest, it's a smaller one we have, the one we use for grade services, things like that. Okay, it's really important. We use it for ripping out concrete. It's a smaller excavator of the two.
All right, thank you. Any other questions? All right, thank you, Mr. Scheer.
Mr. Scheer, the next one would be Rec. I hope you're also going to be very brief.
A couple highlights on mine. Consideration if we do decide to go ahead, or if council approves the arena upgrade, that does need to be adjusted for inflation. I've added playground enhancements and irrigation into a life cycle plan for upgrades over the next several years. And I think that's about it.
All right, thank you. Any questions for Ms. Phillips? Councillor Beckering.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through to Ms. Phillips. Has the small ice arena upgrade, the $1.6 million, has that been funded?
No.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Any other questions? Thank you, Ms. Phillips.
Thank you very much. Just to answer part of that question, the presentation you're seeing today, nothing has been funded at all. It's just to show you their vision and where they're heading with the project. So the next round will bring everything properly funded. The next one, I think I'll call the Geek Squad.
All right.
Your Worship.
Thank you, Al.
So today we have the 10-year plan for IT. We have our projects for replacement of our existing systems and a couple new systems that's recommended in the IT master plan. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Thank you. Any questions arising? All right. Got off easy. Thank you, Al.
Sir.
The same order, I'll call planning also.
Smokes.
Good afternoon. So a lot of the projects that we've indicated through planning and subdivision and land development are placeholders. Figures would be finalized as council is provided information as we move forward. So there are a few of the projects that we've been working on, and I wanted to just kind of keep in mind that there could be some future consideration given to spending funds on the projects as we move forward. And then with the subdivision and land development, the most important one in 2021 would be that northeast servicing. That would be the commitment to service those lands that we are in agreement to sell to the school site. That would be our portion of that work. And then the additional ones, the affordable and alternative housing, again, are just estimates and will likely change given that we are moving forward with a potential partnership on that. So those are essentially placeholders to change as we move forward.
Thank you. Any questions arising? I guess not.
If there are no questions, cemetery, I don't know whether is she on the phone?
Good afternoon, Council.
Good afternoon.
I have a proposition for the finish of Roquet development on the south, but that's actually not until 2024.
All right, thank you. Any questions for Ms. Benham? None whatsoever. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Katie. The next one would be the fire chief.
Chief Munshaw.
Council. So we're here to present our 10-year capital budget. All items on here are for renewal and lifespan cycle replacement. I'm here to open any questions that you have.
Thank you. Questions arising? Everybody getting off easy tonight. Thank you, Chief Munch.
Thank you very much, folks.
Mr. Orwa.
Mark the end of that area.
All right, thank you. Mr. Arpfeld.
Yeah, just if I can add for council, you've seen about $15 million worth of projects presented in front of you this evening. And of course, we have to get that down to about 5 to 6 million. So that's what administration is going to be working on over the next couple of weeks and towards the end of the year where this budget can be passed. So we'll intend on bringing something a little bit more whittled down to you the next session.
All right, fair enough. With that, someone prepared to make a motion. Councillor Tams.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I thank the staff for this 10-year vision, and when you look at all the big numbers at the end, it scares you like you wouldn't believe, but I appreciate it that there's a system in place. And with that, Mr. Mayor, I make a motion that council accepts the 10-year capital budget plan as presented for information purposes.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 6.7, Assessment Review Board Clerk Appointments. Mr. Armfield.
Yes, more for Mr. Orwa. We are getting ready for a tax appeal. Mr. Orwa can lead us through that.
All right, thank you.
Thank you again, members of council. So this year, it looks like we had 3 appeals on the assessment, and 1 has already been settled. So we have 2 to go. And so far, those 2 have not been settled, and it looks like the board will have to sit down to figure out what's going on there. So we remember 2019, we did council appointed Benchmark to handle this area for us. And that bylaw is still very effective. The only problem we have is that the previously appointed Assessment Review Board clerk resigned recently, and therefore we have to look for a new clerk to sit in. And therefore we are just looking for council to appoint our new Assessment Review Board clerk to sit in that meeting.
All right, thank you. Any questions arising? All right, requiring 2 motions. Someone prepared to make the first motion. Councillor Firth.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that council accepts the resignation of Ms. Taylor Sosick as the Assessment Review Board clerk with regret, and council thanks Ms. Taylor Sosick for her contribution during her tenure as the Assessment Review Board clerk for the town of Taber.
Great. Thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. And the second required motion. Councillor Tams.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I move that council appoints Wendy Smith as the Assessment Review Board clerk for the town of Taber for a 3-year period.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 6.8, second quarter financial statements. Mr. Armfield.
Mr. Orwa is not going very far. And this next one is his as well.
Right.
Again, thank you again. Now, before you is the second quarter financial statements, which has gone through the audit committee. And I'll just leave it at that. If at all there are any questions or any member of the audit committee that would like to add anything to the existing financial statements. I know his worship wasn't there, but the alternate was in.
Correct.
That's
right. All right.
Apart from the financial statements, the only thing that the audit committee had recommended for us to share with council is the grants. I know a few late last year or 2018, remember we talked about bringing the intern, and we brought the intern, and we've been working very closely with the intern to make sure that this particular area is addressed. And the audit committee felt that the same story or success story needs to be shared with members of council. So probably if you scroll from up, I'll just start from up, just a little bit. You can see I've divided this thing into different sections. So the first one is the grants that have been received, that is cash, money in the bank. And on the extreme side, the right-hand side, under comments, I put there recurring. Those are grants that even if the intern or I wasn't there, they would still be flowing in. So that's money that would still be flowing in. But the rest is what we've been applying continuously. So the grants received locked money in the bank is about 1.4 million. And then the second category is the approved grants but not yet received. Those are grants that are in line. Some of them have already been approved. They were waiting for our plan. We've sent them out, like those CO2 injectors. And soon that money will also be coming in. So that's a total of 6.5 million. Then the next category is the anticipated grants. These are grants that, for example, the municipal stimulus program, already it's been allocated to all municipalities within Alberta. So they're just waiting for us to submit the plan. That's part of the COVID relief funding. And I think the administration is working hard, and that will come to council at a future date. So that is grants that we're expecting, but we have to put up our plan there for us to receive those funding. Then underneath there, also added federal stimulus funding. There is also money coming from a federal government, and that money, I think the Premier of Alberta had said he would match that on dollar to dollar. So once we get that money, and if they use the same methodology like the municipal stimulus program in allocating those funds, probably we might have another 1 million there as well. Then if you go to the next category, we have applied waiting for results. So this is where the intern has been doing a lot of work for us as well. So those are grants that are out there, and we are waiting to see if we will get something. If you move down, then also in progress, those are grants now. The ones that have already been submitted is about 1.3. Then grants in progress, which we are working on as we speak. Again, those ones are also listed there. So you can see, all in all, we've locked in about 10 million in grants. Out of those 10 million, even if I get half of it, I think everybody in this room will be able to smile from ear to ear. I think I just leave it at that point for council if we have any question.
All right, thank you. Any questions arising? All right, someone prepared to make a motion? Mr. Towns.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, if I can get through this without laughing about it, that we're all going to be smiling from ear to ear. If you get it all, I'll really be smiling from ear to ear. With that, Mr. Mayor, I move that council accepts the grant success summary for information.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. And the second motion. Councillor Firth.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move the council accepts the unaudited financial statements for the 6 months ending June 30th, 2020 for information purposes.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 6.9, pandemic impact procedures. Mr. Armfelt.
Yeah, Ms. Phillips is going to come back up. Of course, we have a lot of policies and procedures in place that did not consider COVID when we were authoring them. And now that we have COVID, there's a few things that are falling outside of those policies and procedures. So please go ahead and have a chat with council about this request.
Great, thank you.
Good afternoon once again. So a couple of items have been brought to my attention on the impact that COVID has had on our users. With our ICE user policy, teams and groups are only given one opportunity at the beginning of December to give back ICE time that's booked from October 31st to February 28th. And what they're asking is that if they need to cancel practices or the season, depending on how COVID proceeds, they're asking for an exception to this policy to allow us to give refunds for the ICE time not used in that event. The second item is pool passes. When we closed the Aquafun Center, all passes were placed on hold. And when we reopened the facility, we only took passes off of hold as they returned to the pool, allowing people to leave their passes on hold until they felt comfortable to come back. Now that all of our amenities are open, and most of our pass holders are back, we're just requesting just to clean things up to take all passes off of hold as of October 1st. And if council wanted, we could also, for those that still are not comfortable coming back, prorate a refund for those users that choose not to use their passes. So we're just looking for some direction from council on these two items.
All right, thank you. Any questions arising? All right, someone prepared to make a motion? Councillor Firth.
Mr. Mayor, I move that Council approves the request for an exception to the ICE services allocation policy to allow ICE user fees to be refunded in the event that the team needs to cancel practices or the season due to COVID cases in the club, team, or organization for the 2020-2021 ICE season.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. On to item 610, senior manager's residency requirement.
One more motion there, Mr.
Pardon me? Oh, so you're right. All right. Are you prepared? All right, Councilor Firth.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that Council directs administration to reactivate all Aquafund passes effective October 1st, 2020, with the option to request a prorated refund due to safety concerns.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Now on to item 610, senior manager's residency requirement. Mr. Armfield.
Yes, Ms. Noble is coming up, our HR coordinator, to run council through this one. Now that we're on top of all of our policies and procedures, we want to stay that way, and this one's coming back for renewal. Ms. Noble.
Great, thank you.
Good afternoon, Mayor Prokop, Council. So today's policy is up for a 3-year review, and it's the Senior Manager's Residency Requirement Policy. So this is your opportunity to make any sort of potential changes or have any questions. You can bring them forward. The policy is up for its 3-year renewal, and no changes have been proposed. Administration is seeking approval for the renewal of the policy.
All right, thank you. Any questions for Ms. Noble? None whatsoever. Someone prepared to make a motion? Councillor Firth.
Mr. Mayor, I move that Council accepts the Senior Manager's Residency Requirement Policy C8 as presented.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 611, Memorial Tree Program Policy. Mr. Armfield.
Yes, Ms. Phillips is coming up in our quest to make things easier for people to contribute to the municipality. This falls underneath that umbrella. So, Ms. Phillips.
Thank you, Ms. Phillips.
So the memorial tree and bench policy I've been working on for a little while, and I'd like to propose to council. It would allow individuals to purchase a tree or a bench in order to pay tribute and remember their loved ones while also enhancing our parks.
All right, thank you. Any questions whatsoever? Councillor Garner? Did you? Sorry, the light was still on for you. Okay, sorry. Councillor Firth.
Mr. Mayor, through to Ms. Phillips. The Memorial Tree Program that was in place, was there a record of, like, is there any way to know which trees are the memorial trees and which ones aren't?
There are some very basic handwritten notes, so not really. Yeah.
As a follow-up question, in the future, what is the plan to differentiate these trees from any other tree in the park?
There'd be a couple options. One, we would definitely map them and make note we'd actually have a record stating that this is a memorial tree, because we'd also, in the policy I have in there, that we would maintain and replace if, there was damage. We did one for a staff member previously last year, and they chose to put a rock in front of it with some information. So there's always some options like that, but we would definitely map them. Yeah.
All right, thank you. Councillor Bruin.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that council approves the memorial tree and bench policy PS-REC-12 as presented.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 612, information from council. Mr. Armfield.
Yes, some very unfortunate information for council this afternoon. We had a lot of excitement earlier this year, or I guess late in 2019, with the Tabor Grasslands Collaborative project, looking into buying a significant amount of land in our industrial area. It would appear that due to COVID, they've lost their funding for that project, and now they're still working on reacquiring some funding, and they still have every intention of moving ahead. But you have received an information letter in your package from the EO of Grasslands Tabor Collaborative, indicating that they have lost their funding, and for the note of council that administration is no longer holding on to this property. This property is back on the open market, and of course, still wanting to work with this group if they can seek some funding and come back to us, and we can put them back on the table. But at this time, by their own admission, they've lost their funding and are trying to seek new partners.
All right, thank you. Any questions whatsoever? Councillor Beckering.
Mr. Mayor, I'm prepared to make a motion.
Thank you.
That council accepts the material received in this agenda item as information.
Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 613, standing item, council requests. Mr. Armfield.
This is the opportunity that council has to ask administration any questions or give us any direction through the form of a motion.
All right, thank you. Any items arising? Councillor Firth.
Mr. Mayor, I had a citizen of the town of Tabor approach me. They are a member of the Southern Alberta Trail Riders Association, and they had organized, that group, a trail ride in the Trout Pond area. And they were wondering if there was a possibility for them to be able to park their trucks and horse trailers in the old pro rodeo grounds. They suggested that when they did this ride, they had parked along the road and that it was a safety concern for themselves and their horses as well as the general public. And I asked if, it was a possibility to park in the Trout Pond parking lot. They advised me that that was not, there's not enough room there. And again, the same safety concerns. So I told them I would bring this forward to council and see if there is any appetite to open that up as a parking area for people looking to use that area.
Great, thank you. Councillor Bruin.
I'll just speak to Carly. First thoughts there. I'd agree with that. If they could park on the rodeo grounds there, I think it'd be a good use for it. The only concern would be if it's wet or muddy, the road may not be that accessible. But I think it's a great idea, and I'd support it.
All right, thank you. Mr. Armfield.
Your Worship, my one information piece that I would have for council is that horse riding, of course, is not permitted around the Trout Pond location, right around the trail itself. So if the riders were to park at the old rodeo grounds, I'm not sure, we would want to be sure that their route that they were picking gave some buffer to the Trout Pond recreation area. So that's my only comments, is moving forward with this. No problem moving forward, but of course, as council has vetted the rules for the Trout Pond, that is prohibiting horses from going into that area, we could be creating our own conflict. But we just have to be careful with the route if that is designated as an offloading zone for the equestrian pursuits.
All right, thank you. Councillor Firth.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I'd be prepared to make a motion to direct administration to engage with the Southern Alberta Trail Riders Association to explore the feasibility of parking in the old pro rodeo grounds area. Yeah, I think that covers it.
All right, thank you, Mr. Armfield. In all fairness, I think that covers the parking. That doesn't cover, I don't think, what you were asking for the route, correct?
No, Your Worship, it doesn't, but it gives administration some work to do.
All right, so that's a good start for you?
Yeah, I mean, council can say, if you pass this motion, that you're directing us to welcome them into that space, which we certainly will. But then also we would have to ensure that wherever they're headed to isn't going to create a recreational conflict, which that we've had out there between the walkers and the bikers and the horses. So we would want to make sure that we weren't creating a conflict there, but no problem hosting them there if that's council's direction.
All right, thank you. Councillor Tams?
Now that the motion's on the table and things have been answered, you can turn my light off.
It's off. Councillor Stravas.
Yes, Your Worship, I only see a conflict arising in the future with this here by allowing them to park there or even investigate. I don't think that's the best location. I would suggest that we look for an alternative location for them. You know, there has been some conflict in the past, and I couldn't support this motion, even for administration to waste their time to look at it, because there's no way out of there except through the trout pond or down the highway or 864 or anything. So I don't see the logic behind even investigating this motion.
All right, thank you. Councillor Garner.
One of the concerns I would probably bring forth as we're discussing this is, does it present a fire hazard when we pull vehicles onto that tall, dry grass out there? I'd hate to see us burn down the town.
Yes, that's an open-ended question. Councillor Garner, was that directed at anyone in particular?
No, just any takers that could give me some assurances that we're not going to do that.
Right. Councillor Firth.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through to Councillor Gardner, even though it was an open-ended question, I think that would probably be included in the investigating of the feasibility of parking out there. I certainly don't want to see the town burned down either.
That's good. Councillor Bruin.
Now, speaking in favor of Councillor Firth's motion, I think I strongly support being a loading area for horses, being the old rodeo ground there. The people have been riding their horses out there for 100 years plus, and now for us to take that privilege away from them, I don't think that was right. So there's some established horse routes through there that have been used for years, and I think that's a good part of our heritage to horse riding, so I really support it.
All right, thank you. Councillor Stavas.
Yes, Your Worship, I would like to add a friendly amendment if this is going to pass forth. There's a piece of land that the town owns north of the cemetery along White Ash Road that the town owns out there, and we put up for sale at one time and couldn't sell it. Perhaps that piece of land should be included in to see what would be more feasible, because that's more on the edge of town, and from there it could lead down into the coulees and wherever. So my friendly amendment would be to investigate that piece of land as well.
Yeah, I would certainly accept that friendly amendment. The person that I spoke to was just one member of this Trail Riders Association, and so this was the only area that they had inquired about. But I mean, if we're investigating places for parking horse trailers, I suppose it doesn't hurt to include that one as well.
All right, thank you. Councillor Beckering.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It seems to me that the friendly amendment proposed by Councillor Strovers is outside the parameters of a friendly amendment. It's a changing of the motion to such an extent that it defeats the motion in a way. So I don't think it should be included.
Great, thank you. Mr. Armfeldt, from your perspective, does that create extraordinary difficulties for two different locations for a similar conclusion?
Two responses, Mr. Mayor. Ultimately, Mr. Mayor, this is your decision to make as the chairperson. However, I have to support Councillor Garner in this regard. Sorry, Councillor Beckering in this regard. I have to support Councillor Beckering in this regard that one item was being asked for directly from the group itself, and we have gone and introduced something that is geographically quite separate from the location that was requested. So I would concur with Councillor Beckering that likely these are not two consistent things to roll into one motion. They are so separate, and my advice would actually be to separate these two into two motions, to go back to Councillor Firth's original motion and see how that floats, and if it doesn't float, then try a second motion.
In case, Your Worship, I'll withdraw my friendly amendment.
All right. Pardon me?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Oh, thank you. All right. All right. Fair enough. Once again, we do have a motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Defeated. Thank you. All right, we're on to, I guess, delegation for 5 o'clock. So I ask for a motion to adjourn. Sorry? Oh, sorry. Or do we have some more accountants? Standing item requests. Sorry, Mr. Arfield.
Yeah, generally there might be a couple more standard requests, and just to give an update for the spreadsheet that's there.
Enough.
But I give council the opportunity to continue on with your conversation before I start mine.
And if I did not clarify that, my apologies. Are there any other standing item asks? Councillor Bruin.
Mr. Mayor, I had a local business owner come to me with concern. I said I'd bring it to council for their thoughts. He had to shut down his business during COVID, but he was still paying for garbage pickup and whatnot for several months, and he thought perhaps that was unfair, and I told him I'd raise his concerns here.
All right. Are you looking for
What he was,
by way of a motion?
What he wanted was his garbage pickup bill taken off, because he says the business is empty, I'm not allowed to be open, and he thought it was unfair that the town charged him for garbage removal during the time.
All right. I guess those are fair comments, Councillor Bruin, but are you looking to put that in some form of
Looking
motion?
for council thoughts on
Just
this.
some discussion. All right. Any other discussion, comments? Councillor Thames.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I believe that a while back at this council that a similar request had come to waive the garbage fees because they were closed. Not 100% certain, but I believe this request has already come and council's already said no. The ability for garbage to get picked up is there, and you get to pay for it. It's not that he didn't use the service, but the service was provided, and I think we've already talked about this and decided on this.
All right. Thank you, Councillor Thames. It does sound familiar. Does that sound accurate, Mr. Arfield?
Your worship, whether was this matter specifically or another one, or with regards to utilities, water, wastewater utilities, this matter certainly has come to council before, and the direction from council has been to move forward with consistent billing outside of any considerations of COVID. That if the service is there and the service is available and the service is being provided, you have directed administration to bill for that service.
All right. Thank you. Councillor Stravas.
Yes, Your Worship, I concur, because we had a request for this here to come forth when people are down south for 6 months and that they still pay their utility bills. So this would fall in that line. So this is we couldn't support this on a go forward basis.
Thank you, Councillor Bruin.
Yes, thank you, council. I told the business owner that I'd bring this up just for your attention.
Fair enough. Thank you. Any other standing item requests? All right, Mr. Arfield, the continuation.
Yeah, just bringing up the action item list. The first two, Councillor Strovas knows that Ms. Van Ham is working diligently on the Alberta-Japan Twinning Municipalities Association AGM for 2021, and that with the motion this evening that was passed, we'll be removing the last one from that spreadsheet for Councillor Garner requesting the tree rings.
All right, thank you. Councillor Stravas.
Just as an update, Your Worship, for the rest of council, I've been appointed to the board of the Alberta-Japan Twinning Association. We have her, and we sent them up a tentative schedule of events, and they've looked at it, and they think it's workable. And we have our first meeting on Wednesday evening, so it's going forth rather nicely.
All right, thank you. All right, anything else? All right, I would ask for that motion to adjourn until 5 o'clock to reconvene for our delegations. Councillor Thames.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I move that we adjourn till 5 o'clock and reconvene with delegations.
Thank you. Motion on the table. All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you.
You're going to get debarred from the committee if you do that.
All right, if we could reconvene the meeting, please. Start with our delegations. Item 7.1, community mailbox. Mr. Armfield.
Yes, Mr. Smolnicki is here to make a presentation with regards to the community mailbox that I just had up on the screen, but Mr. Smolnicki can give us the details on that. Please go ahead, sir. And I just ask you to speak into the microphone.
Mr. Smolnicki.
Mayor Prokop, we have done some business together, which I'll bring forward in a moment. And council members, I'm very happy to be here because some of the things that I've experienced, I really don't know down to earth why I'm here, because I'm not asking for anything other than an appreciation for what I've gone through, to ask for a very simple move of Canada Post to move a CMB approximately 30 meters to the other side of the street, which would solve many, many problems. In fact, anything that I could come up with as a problem would be solved by that very simple and inexpensive move. I'm probably here because I did, for advice and help and support, get Mayor Prokop involved in it. So he has probably asked me to come and kind of clear the air as to why I'm involving a mayor on something that has to do mostly with Canada Post. Well, the reason that I first tried to do this, and I'm going to just net this part out, our CMB is not on a sidewalk, which might seem like, who cares, not a big deal. But I've done some of my own personal statistics, and about 98 to 99% of all the CMBs in Taber are on a sidewalk. So I asked myself, why is ours different? It causes problems in mobility for people with walkers, with maybe women with baby buggies, or call them what you like, but they can't get to that CMB. And a simple move would solve it all. So that's sort of the bottom line as to what we're working on. Let me start by saying that living there for 12 years and picking up the mail, it didn't bother me. I guess most of the time you stop with your car and pick up your mail. You may walk over, but on November 28th of last year, Taber was lucky enough to get about 2.25 to 2.5 feet of snow. 3 days after that snowfall, I went to get my mail, and the clearing brigade, snow clearing brigade, had done a wonderful job in clearing 54th Street all the way along, starting on the east side, and with multiple moves had pushed that snow to the west side. When I went to get my mail, I was faced with a 3.5 foot snowbank virtually covering that CMB that I had to access to get my mail. Well, I noticed that others had climbed over that snowbank, so I thought, well, I'm still pretty nimble. I can probably get over that snow. I got to the top okay, slowly. Unfortunately, the downside was a little faster on my face and on my nose, and I probably got up and said something like, darn. But anyway, I get my mail. Now, how do I get out of here? I'm not climbing over that snowbank again. So I had to walk in the trees down to the four-way stop, around the fire hydrant there, and back on 54th to get to my car. Well, when I got home, I still was a little bit past, still trying to get by this darn, situation. So I had to blame somebody. Well, I'm going to blame Canada Post, because if it weren't there, then I wouldn't have had that very particular problem. So I phoned, and the young lady there was Caroline. Just said, "Well, you've told me this story that the movement of the CMB would solve all these problems. It's so logical, of course. I'll go and take some pictures of the snowbank, and I'll give you a phone number. I can't do anything here. I don't have the authority, but I'll give you a phone number that you can phone down east, and they'll do it for you in a minute. They'll approve that." Well, I did that. I made that phone call, actually 4 times, because each and every time I called, I got a different group of people, and I discussed with them the problem, and they all said, "Yes, that's the way it should be. You should move it. All the problems will be gone. We'll give you a service ticket, which will simply go to Tabor, and they'll act upon it and move that CMB for you." That's the first time. When nothing was done, I phoned again, and I was told the CMB, or the service ticket, had been denied, and I wouldn't accept it because everybody was saying, yeah, let's do it. That would solve all the problems. So they gave me another service ticket, and after that, when I called again, denied, another service ticket. A 4th time, I was given again another service ticket. Well, I had to fight for that one, because I was told that it just wasn't going to happen. Canada Post was never going to move that. They've never done things like that, and the problems that I'm telling them, no, they're not going to see that as being important enough. It's just not going to happen, so give up. Well, I got a little indignant at that, and I said, okay, I hope you'll give me that 4th service ticket, but I'm really eager to get some kind of action on this. So to kind of push things along, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a big chain and I'm going to wrap it around the CMB and bring in a tractor, and I'll move that darn CMB 30 meters across the street where it should have been in the first place. And he said, well, I really don't think you mean that, but anyway, here's your new CMB, or your new service ticket. And I said, what if I wanted, he said it was going to Ottawa. So I said, well, give me a name or somebody that I can talk to in Ottawa. And I can't do that. He hung up. Well, I went on the internet and I found that there was a new CEO for that particular, for the big corporate group of Canada Post, Doug Ettinger. Now, also in looking for him, I found a phone number, a 1-800 number. So, well, if it's a 1-800 number, I can phone that anytime, which I did. And of course, I didn't expect to talk to Mr. Ettinger, but I finally got a manager to talk to me, and I told him that I had this outstanding service ticket, and I was getting a little concerned that nothing is being done. So he said, well, you give me a few minutes, I want to check this out. Finally he came back and he says, I have good news for you, it's been accepted. The CMB is going to be relocated on the other side of the street. Well, how could I ask for anything more? That's beautiful. So I left quite happy, but in the interim, I had called Mayor Prokop and said, you know, I need some advice. This was just before I had given that it was okay. I have to get some advice from you and for some support. What can we do? He said, well, I'll meet you there. So he came to the site and I explained everything. And he said, well, yes, I can see the problem. I can't see necessarily that that's the given solution, but let's see what we can do. Write me a letter and tell me exactly what happened from day one, all these phone calls, who did you talk to, and how did all this transpire? And which I did, and I brought him this letter. Well, anyway, once I got the approval, I thought, boy, this is going to be great. And he did say the paperwork is going to Tabor, and within 5 or 6 days, you should get a call saying who in Tabor is going to do this and get this done. Well, not only 5 or 6 days went by, but 2 weeks went by, and I got nothing. So, well, I should phone. By the way, when I was talking to this manager, I asked him his name, and he said, well, my name is Alex. No problem. When I called back, I asked for Alex. Well, no, he's not here today, but we'll get you another manager. So someone by the name of Emily came, and she said, well, yeah, I see the ticket is here, and it's been approved, and I don't know why it wasn't sent to Tabor. So I'll do that myself, and I'll make sure that they get right on it, and I would say that within just a few days, this should be taken care of. Well, I think you can see that what's happening here is, no, they didn't call me again, as ever. I never got a phone call from anyone as they had offered. So, of course, I waited like, we're into the virus problem, so I waited a month. Nothing happening. I phoned so many times. A young lady by the name of Jill is a Southern Alberta person, and no, she didn't get any information. She knew nothing, and she had no authority. She was just trying to get things going and hire more people because of the virus. It was losing so many people, but she couldn't do anything. Well, I didn't know what to do. Now I have a ticket, but nobody's doing anything about it. It's not coming to Tabor. So I make one more phone call. Well, unfortunately, this time I got the wrong kind of manager because he was a little bit upset with the fact that I was calling him. And, well, we had some rather unfortunate interchange. Anyway, he ended up hanging up on me by saying that this thing is not important enough and will probably not be done at all, but if it is, it won't be until the virus is gone. Well, I really had a problem with that because the comment that was made to me was, well, if it's so damned important for you to have that CMB moved, why don't you move it yourself? Well, that shocked me a little bit that they would say something like that. Well, what am I supposed to do? I had said to the other person that I was going to take a chain and wrap it around the CMB and move it with a tractor. I took my chain and I wrapped it around the CMB in a big lock, and I just laid it on the ground, and it was there for 2 weeks. One day, I go to look for the mail or whatnot, and my chain and locks are missing. Well, since I hadn't reported anything when I fell on my nose, I thought, I need something that kind of is a little more documented. I phoned the police. And I said, somebody stole a chain and lock which I had on my CMB. And a policeman came and took a report. But he said, they'll get that back to you. No problem. Okay, well, what's going to happen next? I have to say that once again, Mayor Prokop was involved. He called me and said, I have talked to Carolyn, and I have talked to, and I have Jill, who is prepared to come with me to the site if you will come there, and we'll try to resolve this situation without tractor work and what's not. Let's see if we can't find something. So we met, and my wife came with us, so there were 5 of us there. We kind of perused where the present one was, and then I said, please come with me. I have a spot where with my neighbor, this is where we have decided would be the better spot. Well, while working there, talking there, the suggestion was made by Jill that, again, she has no authority. There's nothing she can do, but she has got some sort of a hearsay from head office that it's not going to happen. It is not going to happen because, looking at me, she says, you're the only person that has complained. It's been there for 20 years or whatever, and you're the only person that complained. That's not good enough for Canada Post, so it's not going to happen. Well, the discussion went on that maybe there's a way to get this thing back on the road. You might get the idea that I'm a little persistent, but anyway, the suggestion was made that maybe what I should do is either hire or me go around and talk to all the people who use 1C1 and get an idea that maybe there are other people who are concerned about the position of this CMB and maybe we can get moved. Well, I accepted that I would do that survey. So I put a form together and I was trying to go door to door, but with the virus, people just simply were not answering the phone. Sometimes they were, but sometimes, most of the times, you knew they were there, but they weren't coming. So I was a little bit concerned that I was not going to get this done properly as long as the virus was on. So I got another idea. I took my car. I was going to use a chair and just sit by the CMB because on Wednesdays, people come to get their mail. Wednesdays is when Tabor Times is there, your bank statements are there and everything is there. So I was going to sit there in a chair, and as people came for their mail, I would ask them to sign this document. Well, like I said, it was too darn hot at that time in the high 30s. So I took my car, I parked it in this bit of a shade behind the CMB, motor running and the air conditioner running. I sat there for 5 hours, and as people came for the mail, I got a signature. Well, to sort of make this story a little shorter than it's probably getting far too long already. What happened was I finally was able to get that to the mayor, who had requested it. And I think you have a copy of that group of signatures that I had. It's not the signatures, because they've been erased, but the addresses of the people who are basically on the side of saying, yes, we agree, it should be moved. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is basically where we're at today. I'm just going to maybe go a little bit over time and tell you that I want you to appreciate why I've gone to all this trouble. And it's going to be quite personal, because after I graduated from university, I got a job with IBM, and they have an extensive training program. And one of the things that time after time in that program was to tell you, you know, it doesn't take any kind of a special person to see a problem. What it takes is a special person to see a solution and to go after that solution until it's solved. That's what I'm doing here. I'm looking at a number of people who I think are the one I'm talking about that will find not the problem, but a solution. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Mr. Smolnicki. Councillor Stravas.
Yes, Your Worship. To Mr. Smolnicki, I have two questions. How many mailboxes are total in that unit?
Well, I don't know them all because that's kind of a private.
No,
thing.
but, I mean,
I think there are 32.
Okay, 32, and you got 13 signatures. Good. And the other question is, have you ever taken this up with your MP, Martin Shields? It's a federal department.
I have not. And I thought the more direct approach, but maybe that's my next step.
Because it's a federal post office, and I mean, he could probably resolve this rather quickly for you, probably more so quickly than we could.
Just if I could just add a little bit, Mr. Smolnicki, I think everything is pretty accurate from what you've discussed. We've talked about before, as well as the supervisory, Jill from Canada Post in the last. She left that with yourself. That was her request, right, to have those signatures and wanted those submitted. And you've since submitted those to the town. And I had another individual contact me by the name of Wendy. Another supervisor was turned over to from this Jill. And I believe Mr. Armfield is familiar with Wendy. I'm not sure her last name, but anyway, she's a supervisor the town has dealt with before. So her indication was they were prepared to move that at their cost, actually. And I'd indicated you had these names that you had mentioned to me as per Jill's requirement. And as I said, just recently received those here in the last week or so. So her indication was she needed one thing. I believe, Mr. Armfield, there's some standard from the town, some kind of a confirmation from the town of Taber to confirm their usual format when those items are moved. Is that correct?
I'm not aware of that, Your Worship. I have dealt with Canada Post in the past on these issues and had a fair level of success when I deal with Canada Post with these matters. There was a mailbox. Well, Ms. Monks will know that when new developments are planned, the mailboxes, Canada Post actually gets in contact with Ms. Monks. So when I was in that chair, I had developed a relationship with the folks at Canada Post, and they had put one mailbox in an odd location near Taber Home and Farm. And I simply phoned Canada Post and said, I think this mailbox is in a strange location. Can you please move it? And they very promptly did at no cost to the town. So I'm not sure. I have not been engaged, as you know, with Canada Post on this matter at all. So if council would like administration to get involved in this, it's hard to say how it could turn out. But as at this point, I have not contacted them.
All right, thank you. Councillor Beckery.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mrs. Smolnicki, for your presentation. Very concise, and you're a very tenacious person. I like that. I thank Mr. Armfield also for his comments. I'm prepared to make a motion.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That council accepts the presentation of Mrs. Smolnicki related to the relocation of the community mailbox with T1G IC1 for information purposes, and direct administration to engage with Canada Post to review the current location of the community mailbox with T1G 1C1 and to bring forward the review findings to a future council meeting.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Smolnicki.
You.
All right, on to item 7.2, Taber District Community Adult Learning, newcomers. Mr. Armfield.
Miss Jane Brenner is just walking through the door with a guest.
Hello, thank you for having
Brenner,
us.
how are you doing?
For giving us some time on your agenda.
My one request is that the presenter speak into the microphone for the viewing audience at home, please.
Thank you, thank you. So thank you, Council, for giving us some of your time this afternoon. So we're coming before you this afternoon to talk about our newcomer services, which has been in Taber for the last 2.5 years. This was provided through a grant through Alberta Labour. We applied for the upcoming grant. We weren't approved for that grant based on that they didn't think the need and that we didn't address the gaps very good. So now our funding will run out as of September 30th. So we're looking at a shared contribution from the town of Taber of $29,500 for 1 year, in which time we would have time to look at different options and look at ways to raise the money to allow our newcomer services to continue. So I want you to imagine that you're moving from your grandparents or great-grandparents or great-great-grandparents probably face this situation also. So our goal is to help people thrive and get them to the point where they can effectively contribute their skills and labor to developing our community. More of our skilled clients live in town, and while they have lots of valuable experience, they need some help to be able to contribute. These include accreditations, possibly language upgrading, first step into the Canadian work experience, and is often the largest barrier. So of the 500, so when we wrote the proposal to Alberta Labour initially, we suggested that in 2 years that we would serve 200 clients. In 2.5, 42% reported addresses within the town of Taber. 38% presented addresses in the MD of Taber, and 20% others. So I'm going to turn, Sydney is with us from our newcomers program, and she's going to speak to you a bit about some of the services we do in the integration and settlement work.
All right, thank you. Sydney.
Good afternoon, councillors. So as Jane was talking about, our services range from very basic foundational needs like acquiring SIN numbers, housing and healthcare, anything that people need to be able to focus on labor, their working and contributing their skills and knowledge here, to more advanced things, because as you guys might know that labor, finding a job, that's usually the baseline for settlement. That is what you need to survive, and that is what you need to be able to contribute things to the community. And then more advanced things are social integration. So once people have a job, they can start contributing their labor, they have an income, they're stable, then they can start working on volunteering. They can start working on meeting other people outside their group, working on improving their language skills so that they can communicate with everybody and basically assimilate or integrate into the community, make this their home. That's what it is. But the thing is, we understand that integration and settlement work is not just helping these newcomers to integrate into the community, but it's also providing supports to the community to have that capacity to have these people here. Without the supports, then it's not going to go very well. So in this time, not only have we provided a lot of settlement services directly to the newcomers, but also to local businesses. So things that we have done include group translation sessions for employers and their new employees. For example, when they ship in some new workers that don't quite understand the terms and the safety of the workplace, this is where we can come in and kind of help guide them through that and kind of get the workers integrated into the workplace. We've started opening up professional development options. We've had consultations with local employers, that kind of thing, to gauge where they are and their own needs so that we can work on multiple sides of the integration thing. We've got a pretty strong track record of this. About 2.5 years we've been delivering these kinds of services, and not many, we have a very comprehensive service offering as well as our client base. Not many people here are equipped to serve skilled immigrants, which most of our skilled clients, they live in the town of Taber. Pretty much all of the ones who come here as nurses, business owners, they all live in the town. If you look around, you'll see quite a few entrepreneurs who are fairly new to our area. And not many places can serve citizens, which is a lot of our clients, they come here as citizens, but they haven't lived here for very long. It's kind of a tricky situation, but because of IRCC regulations, settlement services can't usually offer services to these people, but we can. And I'll turn it back over to Jane.
So just to give you a snapshot of monthly services, what we do in a month, we saw 100 referrals for general information requests, 80 interpretation sessions, 50 paperwork assistance, driver's license prep, computer digital literacy training, and service directories that people are coming in to ask about different services in our area. We'd like to share with you just one story that gives you an example of what happens to it. So at the end of November 2019, a young woman arrived with her 1-year-old. Her bruises from being beaten by an abusive and unfaithful husband were still visible. No Canadian work experience, friends, knowledge of area, had just arrived in Canada a month prior. No understanding of what it meant to be independent and care for a child in Canada. We built her up from foundational settlement needs to being independent. She started with basics, including a social insurance number, Alberta Health, housing, and getting her resumes for her job hunt. Given the severity of her situation, she also wanted to pursue a divorce, but was terrified of being left with her young baby without support. We were able to connect with her to a court counselor, legal aid, and supported her both emotionally and with paperwork throughout the process. She successfully gained full custody of her child and earned enforced support from her husband. After this, we were able to connect her to our youth employment program, where she learned more about Canadian work systems and helped her to find a suitable work placement for crucial Canadian work experience. She was a nurse in her own country of origin. Newcomers also helped her to get her English language skills assessed, helped her register, ensured that she had access to internet and computer and appropriate training and appropriate location, and she wrote her ICOS assessment for her nursing degree. Combined, these two assessments helped her to acquire fair pay that she was used to. We also helped her to study and successfully acquire her Class 7 driver's license. By the summer of 2020, she is thriving. She has full-time work, friends, a car, and her outlook on life has made a 180-degree turnaround. She has, in essence, become fully independent in a way that helps her to contribute her skills, which are important during these difficult times. She no longer worries about the future of her child, herself, or has been able to cover necessities like taking her son for medical checkups and enjoying hosting his first birthday in Canada. She maintains her connections to our office, bringing in newer arrivals, assisting with research when she can, and occasionally just stopping by to say hello. So that concludes our presentation, and we'd like to open the floor, if it's okay, for questions.
All right, thank you. Any questions arising? Councillor Firth.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through our delegation, you mentioned that the cost that you were seeking was $29,500, a shared cost. Who would be sharing that cost with?
Well, we've made a presentation also to the MD, and they are looking seriously at it, and they're just looking to see whether it fits in their budget, and they'll get back to us September 22nd.
All right, thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Bruin.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Jane, how many customers per year do you say you serve? Is it 550 in total?
550 in 2.5 years, and those are unique. So one client may come back to us multiple times, as you heard in the young woman that we just talked about. But we're servicing about 225 per year that are unique.
220, sorry. We encounter 220, roughly that unique new clients per year, but when we're counting both returning clients and the new clients, it comes out to roughly 450 people, unique people per year.
Just follow up with that. Is there a charge for your service? Do you charge customers?
No, everything's free. The service is all free. Okay. And just one thing I'd like to point out to council, that some of the reason that we can't get funding through the federal government is that the majority of our clients, like I would say the breakdown of our clients is 60% Low German Mennonite and 40% from other countries, is the Low German Mennonites fall through the cracks because they're Canadian citizens born abroad. So it makes it really hard to look for funding for that population. But that doesn't mean that their needs are any less than any other newcomers coming here.
Mr. Strauss.
Yes, Your Worship, to our delegation. Just a question, this young lady that you told a story about, what actually brought her to Taber? Like, I mean, a single, mom by herself, abused, and so just how did she end up here?
I'm going to let Sydney answer that because she worked with her.
Well, she wanted to get away from her partner, and she did switch two provinces over for that, but she did know one person here, not very well, because she didn't quite have family or friends up here, but she did know one person up here that she could kind of get to, so that's what brought her here.
So for a follow-up, so then she was already in Canada then, and her partner was in this other province as well then?
Yeah, she hadn't been in Canada for very long though. She had been here for about, I want to say a month. She was there for maybe a month, and then she came here.
The Newcomer Services presently serves Canadians that are here 10 years or less.
All right, thank you. Any other questions arising? Just to clarify, I believe this is related to, this has been covered by the province the last 2.5 years, is that correct?
It has been covered by the province.
And the application, this...
But if they're newcomers, they always come to us, and they don't usually serve anybody who's non-Low German Mennonite, and as we did say, about 40% of our client base, they are from different backgrounds.
All right.
So, and just to follow up with that, we have, because I was anticipating this question would be posed, so we have an email from Zach Morrison that I can distribute or leave with council, outlining that it's not a duplication of services and what they cover. So, who do I leave this with?
All right, thank you. All right, any other questions arising? All right, someone prepared to make a motion? Councillor Thames.
Mr. Mayor, I'll make the first motion. That council accepts the information provided by Taber District Community Adult Learning regarding a newcomer service financial support request for information purposes, and thanks the delegation for their presentation.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. All right. Secondary motion option. Councillor Towns.
Mr. Mayor, I really have a tough time making the second motion because I'm really not certain where or if we as a town have funding for this, or where we could even pull the funding source for this. So, to make a motion to consider council to participate in this for 1 year, but there's no guarantees that this is going to go on for another year or for the year after that, and my biggest problem to authorize $29,000 in cost sharing for this is I don't feel that this is should fall under the auspices of the town of Taber or the MD. I believe that this is a provincial or a federal issue, not just a localized issue. And I really cannot support spending $29,500 without some clarity from our provincial government and federal government how you could fund something for 2.5 years and just out of the blue drop it, because I don't think that is under the auspice of the town to be doing this. I believe it is federally and provincially that it should be funded. So I cannot make the second motion, Mr. Mayor.
All right, thank you. Just to continue on with that, bottom line is you're right, it has been provincially funded, Councillor Thames. And that's the biggest issue. The application was submitted as per normal the last 3 times, is it? Three times, right? And denied for no great reason. They don't believe, correct? They didn't have a great reason for you. So I think that's why the ask is to come to the town of Taber and or the MD for a potential cost sharing possibility to at least see this program go for another year. Councillor Bruin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Would a letter of support to the agency help at all from the town?
It would not, because we included a letter of support from the town and the municipal district when we submitted the application.
And then you have, of course, spoken with Mr. Hunter.
We have, and Grant is aware of our needs.
All right. Any other questions arising? Comments? All right. Any other questions? Councillor Bruin.
I have a comment further. I think this is a very important service, and town of Taber, one of our problems is shortage of workers, and if this could somehow encourage people to come to Taber for jobs and be trained, it's a bonus for the town for workers. But I think we got to think about this a little bit to see where the money could come from. But I sure think this program should continue.
Councillor Bruin, I would concur 100%. That's it's a shame that to help 550 some odd newcomers there to this stage, and the possibility of this program coming to an end is not a great end result. So if there's some way, I think it would be great if we can support that in some capacity, and or the MD as well. Councillor Bruin.
I just have a follow-up question. When I asked for it, they don't pay anything for this service. It's a free service we provide. Is it possible to charge your customers? Like, it wouldn't take much to get to that if you're serving 500 people a year to maybe recoup some money from it.
There's a possibility, I suppose, of doing that, but for the most part, settlement services are provided free within the province. Yeah, and the other thing, like Sydney pointed out, they don't have the money to pay. You know, they come and they're just starting out. They just don't have the money.
All right. Any other questions arising? Councillor Chavez.
Yes, Your Worship, to our delegation here. You mentioned settlement services. Are there other organizations around that deal with this kind of thing? Like you specifically mentioned settlement services. So can you clarify on that? Like, is there provincial? Does Lethbridge have settlement services? Do other jurisdictions do this?
They do. Lethbridge does have settlement services. We already went to them and asked them if they would take us under their umbrella. Their answer was no, because we are serving Canadian citizens and they do not serve Canadian citizens.
Right. Anything else? All right. With that, well, thank you once again so much for your presentation. Appreciate that very much.
For your time.
On to item number 7.3, Delegation Westview Playground Funding. Mr. Armfield.
I believe Mr. Pickrell is coming up to speak, as well as Mr. Workington.
Mr. Pickrell, Mr. Workington.
Just over a year ago, Bruce and I began an effort to get a playground constructed in the Westview neighborhood. Bruce actually approached me with the idea of being a resident of that neighborhood and seeing the need. And maybe I'll let Bruce sort of speak to that need a little bit more. But he approached me as a president of the Kinsman Club, and of course our Kinsman Club is more than happy to get involved in projects of that nature. So we began an effort last August, September, with the intention of applying for a CFEP grant, which is of course a matching grant. So we took the winter of 19 and 20 to fundraise. Bruce worked with the town to identify a site, and the town actually had some grant funding, I believe was intended for a playground structure in Confederation Park that didn't pan out. So some of that funding was sort of transferred to this project. So between that and Bruce and the Westview residents' neighborhoods' efforts in fundraising and our Kinsman Club, we were able to come up with about $65,000 of cash. And then in addition to that, we lined up $14,000 approximately of donations in kind, the equipment required to do the project and the volunteer labor required to do the project. So with that $80,000, we made a CFEP application with the January 15th intake. One of the difficulties with CFEP grant funding is the timeline. So we applied the January 15th deadline, and the results aren't announced till July. We were, of course, hopeful to be approved for that and planned on construction in August. But unfortunately, we were declined our application with CFEP. I was able to have a debriefing phone call, so to speak, with a lady at Community Grants, and she verified that it's an eligible project. We're an eligible organization. It was the Kinsman Club actually making the application for the CFEP grant. They liked that all our funding was in place. It was not pending. Where we I guess lost out was that there's a fixed amount of funding and lots of projects and lots of requests. So we didn't make the cut. She absolutely encouraged me to apply again, which we've done already. The next intake was a September 15th deadline, so we've applied for that CFEP grant again. But as I said, the timeline, we don't get results of that till March. So we're hopeful that we'd get approved in March and we'd do a spring build. That's our hope. But we realize that that's not a guarantee. We've been at this for just over a year, and we certainly hoped or intended to build this with little or no cost to the town. But what we're asking for is if it's possible to, we understand it's budget time, and if we could get some funding in capital budgeting, so that if we are in fact unsuccessful with our CFEP application when they announce the results in March, that if the town would have some funds available, that we could continue with the build then. If the town approves us for some funding, and then we are successful with the CFEP application, then of course we wouldn't use any of the money from the town. It could be used for whatever other use you see fit. I think some of the numbers, one thing I wanted to clarify in the numbers that you were given, the total budget in the information says 137,017. That was the quote from Blue Imp, but that is prior to GST and prior to installation costs. So the actual budget was 157,908, and our CFEP application was for 77,868. Again, it's a matching grant, so with our cash and our donations in kind, we're sitting at approximately $80,000, and we applied for a $77,868 grant from CFEP. So I guess that's kind of our ask is the 77 to replace that grant if we're unsuccessful. However, we do have room to change the scope of the project somewhat. Blue Imp, of course, has numerous structures available, and we don't have to stick with the structure that we've got a quote on. We can sort of back off on it a little bit. And shortly after we were informed that we were turned down for the grant, Bruce and I met with Don, and we talked about the possibility of building a structure just with the funds we have. But we felt, all of us agreed and felt that it would, the structure would be not appropriate for the neighborhood. I know there's been other structures built in other areas for that kind of money or even less, but they're kind of specific to, a 2 to 4 age group or a 4 to 6 age group, and we're trying to build a structure that would be appropriate for the entire Westview neighborhood for many years to come. So we didn't feel it was appropriate to build a sort of a much downsized project, basically half of what we had planned. So that is our ask. What do you want to add?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Awesome. Great. Thanks, Todd. And thanks for appearing in front of the rec board. I wasn't able to make that, so appreciate that. And they were very good to work with and got us here much quicker than I thought we were going to make it here. So I appreciate Mayor and Council for meeting with us so quickly. Now, if you back when Todd and I were here over a year ago, there was a lot more optimism in the world and in the town and in the province, and everybody had more money, and there was more talk, and there was more generosity because people had more things. Now, the generosity in this town is phenomenal when it comes to projects people believe in, but even that is taxed when COVID-19 hits and people lose jobs and industries are pretty much decimated with the effect of COVID. So that has brought us to this point where, you know, Todd and I were optimistic we could raise this money just from the community, which community and also Kinsmen, and doing bottle drives, doing casinos. But we've got a huge hole to fill, and we were hoping the grant was going to be there to fill it. Unfortunately, it isn't, and we're not likely to stop and not continue to go down this road. The unfortunate thing is, if somebody donates money a year ago, they want to see something happen relatively soon rather than when their kids or have grandkids, right? So our ask isn't for new money. Our ask is, we understand that there's a certain amount you allocate for new or redoing parks in this town, and I'm sure you're all aware Westview is one of the newer neighborhoods that you're looking to invest in with new lots, new builds. And one of the things that is missing is those 170 existing households have no access to a playground. And I don't want to go down this road a whole long ways again, but on that side of town, the only playground is in McGrath Estates, that tot lot that's hidden back in there. And I walk by there daily, and I rarely see somebody there. Not that it's not a bad park, it's a tot lot. It's for a specific age group of people. So when Todd and Don and I chatted about a $65,000 playground, yeah, it sounds like a lot of money, but you're really only getting maybe a one age group type of playground. And we were tasked with coming up with a handicapped accessible playground that fits a neighborhood that has kids all the way from 1 to 14, 15 sort of thing. So you want to have different playgrounds available for different age groups. So we're to this situation where we're always going to turn it back to the town. We're always going to do this on behalf of the town. The town receives the asset, and I think it's a valuable part of that area because you're seeing a lot of growth happening there, and it will only attract more families to that area. Because if I have my family's growing up quite rapidly, but if my kids were little, that's not a great area for that reason, because there's a lake, there's a path, but there's nothing for them to do other than going all the way over to St. Pat's and that playground there. So I guess we're also looking for some direction. If you don't see fit to help us in this regard, and we continue to apply for grants, this could be quite a long process. And we're not willing to give up on this anytime, because I don't think it's harder to return that money at this point in time, because we need a park there, a playground there at some point, and it's going to happen at some point. I'd rather have it sooner rather than later. So we're not asking for new money, new budget, only to be put into the queue of redoing or new playgrounds in the town of Tabor's capital budget for this purpose. Bob, anything to add?
All right, thank you. Councillor Stravas.
Yes, Your Worship, but just a refresher question that I need from administration. When a developer develops an area, is there not some sort of a commitment that he needs to provide a playground?
Back to council through Mayor Prokop, no, there isn't. There is not a requirement within our policies for development agreements to include any sort of landscaping that would include a playground.
So, Councillor Stravas, if I could just maybe to refresh everybody's memory, the plan was for the playground to be in phase 10, and we're in phase 4. So we're looking at about a long time from now before we get to phase 10.
Thank you for that clarification. I was thinking that maybe something, if there was something, could be worked out with the developer. Maybe he's turned over a new leaf or something, would be a little more amenable to a playground.
Mr. Beckering.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. To the delegation, you mentioned you're going to continue CFEPing, right? And you're asking for support from council in their capital budget for 2021. Now, it seems to me that if council would approve your request regarding the amount of money you're requesting, and you still are actively pursuing CFEP funds, wouldn't that diminish the ability to get approval of that CFEP? Because somebody's going to say, well, you got money already from the town, so what do you need money for? You know what I mean? To me, that's a very dangerous situation. I can assure you, gentlemen, that if the CFEP people, the approvers, would know that this council had approved your request, your CFEP would fail. I can guarantee you.
Yeah, that's a valid point, Garth. You know, the CFIP application has been made. It's already been sent in. You know, and I don't want to make a comment like, they won't. How would they hear about it? I mean, I understand what you're saying, and so I guess what we're asking is if we get turned down in March, will you have any money for us? I guess that's what we're asking.
Councilor Beckering, I guess it's a bit of a chicken and egg thing because we're a volunteer organization, and or Kinsman is, and we are just trying to get this done. I mean, we'll go to any path we need to get it done, of course. And from my understanding, what Todd was saying when he discussed it with the Grand people, that there was a lot of ask. COVID, there's a ton of need out there. Who's to say what priority our project is? Possibly, maybe they looked at it to the fact that it's a community, maybe a municipal issue instead of a CFIP issue. CFIP, am I saying that right? CFIP? CFIP. So you're right. We don't want to go to both, have one. We wouldn't apply, if you approved it into your ongoing budget, I don't think we'd go back and apply for funding as well then.
I suppose if you were to make a decision to offer us this funding, we could rescind our application. They don't make a decision until March, so that's a possibility too, I guess.
Just to reiterate this, I've said it a couple of times, but we're not asking for new money. We just want to be in the queue for when you redo parks or playgrounds in this town. And I'm not privy to which one's next, but I think this should be a high priority playground for the reasons I've outlined before. This is an area where you're putting a lot of money into developing that side of Tabor, and this would just be a significant asset or a draw for more individuals or families to be into that area.
Councilor Bruin.
I'd ask a question, probably obvious answer, but have you approached the developer there for any money? Because boy, that'd be good PR for him. And that would be an avenue maybe to pursue. Like we're going to consider this perhaps for the 2021 budget. We can accept this as information for now. I agree, I guess, and then consider it.
All right, thank you, Councilor Towns.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. This issue has come in front of the Rec Department at the Rec Board meeting, and there was a motion made from Rec Board that we Rec Board would support this contingent on the town, of course, because there's money involved. But the Rec Board saying capital budget contingent on the project not having success in acquiring grant funding. And I kind of like that because we're not stopping them from doing this. They're not asking us to give them a certain amount. They're asking us to put them in the queue for the capital budgeting. And I personally could support that. We would put $50,000 in the capital budget. It's not a guarantee that they're going to even get the funds, but it puts them in the queue. It's on that list. It's not something that we have to spend the money. To accept this as information is great, but I think we also need to give them some direction that we're not opposed to this playground. We're in favor of the playground, but we really want to encourage you guys to go get the money from CVIP. But at least puts it in the queue so it doesn't die. Because I get what you're saying. You can't return $65,000, and people that have said, "I'll give you equipment to do this," without if there's no light at the end of the tunnel, that's what you're going to have to do. But this at least puts a light at the end of the tunnel and puts it in the queue that maybe it could get looked at. I could support this. And with that, Mr. Mayor, I am willing to make a motion.
All right.
First motion is council accepts the presentation as information. Do you want them as one motion or two?
I believe that can go into one motion, can it not, Mr. Herfeld?
Administration's recommendation always to council is that if you, not to mix your pleasures too much. So if you want to float one motion that you're fairly certain is going to pass, put that as one motion. And then if you got something that you may not be as successful, or you're wondering if it's going to be as successful, to put that into a second motion.
And Mr. Mayor, I'm going to make the motion. Council accepts the presentation as information, and council directs administration to add $50,000 to the 2021 capital budget to contribute to the Kinsman Club of Tabor for the completion of the Westview Estates Playground.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. Councillor Stravas.
Your Worship, I appreciate where Mr. Tams is going, but I think his motion is a little bit too specific. I would support this if he would make it a little less specific, in meaning that you mentioned this playground and specifically.
Specific dollar figure?
I like to support this, but I think the fact that that you're putting it to a specific project, I think probably maybe you should reword it that council accepts this information and recommends to administration to put this forth in a budgetary process for this playground rather than a specific, so that it goes to the budgetary process, so we don't accept and move it into the budgetary process tonight, that it's moved forward to the budget discussions.
Accept that. Now I just got to figure out how to word it.
First off, Councillor Towns, we're going to do that. You need to withdraw your current.
I'll withdraw the motion I've given you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Take another whack at this. The council accepts the presentation as information, and council recommends to administration to add the Westview Estates Playground to future capital budgets. Could you support that? 2021 capital budget, yes.
All right, motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Oh, hang on. Councillor Beckering.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, a little late on the draw there, but could the motion please be reread?
All right, Councillor Tams.
Carrie, did you get that?
Councillor Tams, that council accepts the presentation as information and directs administration to add the Westview Estates Playground to future 2021 capital budget.
Councillor Beckering.
Mr. Mayor, friendly amendment, please take the word future out of there. It's either 2021 or not.
Acceptable with that?
I'm acceptable with that.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried now. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you very much. Let's go get the grant funding.
All right. Item number 8, media inquiries. No media in attendance. Do we have any text or phone call? Thank you, Mr. Smolnicki. Do we have any direction or indication from the media with any questions whatsoever that you're aware of?
Nothing has come in, Your Worship.
All right, thank you. With that, ask for a motion to move into closed session. Motion on the table. All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you.
10-minute break.